makes. And today we're going to make a flower petal card. Now you can see the picture on the slide here, but here it is in real life. This is gorgeous. It has a double-sided cardstock here. It has some scrapbook paper and of course cardstock for the card itself. We also made an envelope that actually matches the center of the card as well. So we had a lot of fun making this. Now you're going to need a number of materials here for this particular card. And let's take a look at what our material list will be. Now, first of all, you're going to need a piece of cardstock for the card itself. And that's this color that I had used, this light green, but you could use any color you want. I prefer to use a plain cardstock for the inside and outside of my cards. And then next, you are going to need a piece of long cardstock. And the reason you're going to need long is because when you cut out the envelope, this is longer than a 12 by 12, so you're going to need a 12 by 24 piece of paper. They do exist, or you can tape a couple together and have it cut that way as well. And you're going to need a piece of double-sided cardstock, and that is for the flower petals itself. I used green on one side and some stripes on the other for this particular card, but you could pick other colors as well. You could use hearts on one side and arrows on the other, or it depends what you want to use for it. And then, of course, after the cardstock, you're going to need 2 pieces of scrapbook paper, and once again, those are for the inside of the card. So there is a smaller piece that matches in here and another one on the outside. You could use wood patterns, you could use bright colors. It doesn't really matter. These are scrapbook paper, so they're only one-sided. So you can pick anything you want to go with it. And then of course you're going to need some tacky glue, and I have my tacky glue here, and the reason I prefer tacky glue on this project is because there's a number of pieces you have to fit in together. And besides tacky glue, there's one other thing that I didn't add to the list here, but you can use this red tape to hold things down as well. This is a double-sided tape. That works extremely well. And of course, beyond that, you're going to need a burnishing tool to make sure everything is crisp and clean. You can use a credit card or you can use another scraper, but you do need a burnishing tool. You will need a pair of scissors and of course a Cricut machine for cutting everything out so everything is perfectly exact. And if you don't want to use a Cricut machine or a cutting machine, you can cut them by hand because I'm providing you with a template. You can find that at betsmakes.com/library. So if you're ready, let's get going with the project. But one last thing, I ask you if you would please subscribe to my YouTube channel. So let's get going and let's have some fun. Well, I hope you're ready. I'm in Design Space with a brand new canvas, and we're going to upload a file called Flower Card Kit. So let's just upload the file before we get going here. And browse for it. Actually, I have it open on the other screen, so I'm just going to drag it in place. And it has all the pieces that we're looking for, the envelope, the card, the flower petals. So Flower Card Kit, I will just leave it the same. I'm going to save it. And I'm going to select it and insert the image. Now it's going to come in fairly large with many different colors, so we're going to make some adjustments here, and in order to make the adjustments I'm just going to move it over a little bit so that we can color different pieces. But right now the whole thing is grouped together, so the first thing I want to do is come over into this side right here and ungroup. Everything should be ungrouped at that point. I should be able to select. Now this piece is the card itself, and it is a cut, but it's going to be a cut and a score. So what I want to do is I'm just going to change the color of it so I can see it better. And there should be a line right in behind it. You can just barely see it, but it has been moved to the front, so I'm going to send this to the back. I didn't want to send to the back. Move it. It should have my score line right there, but it doesn't seem to want to appear. Okay, so we will add our own score line here, or we'll take a look at our group. have a cut line here, cut line here, and a cut line here. It looks like I have 3 different lines, and for some reason these will come in like this. So I'm going to take the center one and I'm going to change it from cut to score. And I'm actually going to remove the other 2. I'm going to delete this one, and I am going to delete this one. And I'm going to move the score line up the top, and it seems to have gone now. That's perfect. So those are a couple of adjustments that they always seem to happen when you bring things in as an SVG file. That's why it's always best to take a look at the video to make sure. So now we have our score line here, and we have our card. Now before we move on to the next one, I want to highlight both of these. Yes, I want to make sure now that they are attached together, and that will mean that the score line will stay with the card. So down in this bottom right hand corner, I'm going to click on attach. Now the card itself is all attached together. It shows attached up here, so we're ready to go with this one. Now the next 2 squares you see here, we need to color these different colors because these are going to be the scrapbook pages. They're going to be cut separately, and let's make one green. So I want them on different pads. I'm going to make sure that they are separated into different colors. Now let's deal with the next 2. This is the circle. It's no big deal if we wanted to keep it the same color as this one, and I'm going to change it from black because it's a little hard to see to yellow, and I think we can change this one to yellow as well. And this is the envelope itself. So let's start with the envelope. Now it is put together here. As you can see, there's some cuts, and the main cut is here, but I don't like this color, so I'm going to change it to yellow. And now you can see the lines that will be cut. Now we don't want these ones cut. We want them, obviously, to be scored. So, first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to ungroup everything. And yes, that did help. So I'm going to Control Z, put it back into place. Now we come across this other one, flower card cut, and it seems to be just a little piece. For some reason wants to be cut by itself, but we don't want that, so we're going to delete it. Now we show a cut line here. Let's pull it up a bit so we can see the pieces. Let's see, for some reason it didn't want to. Okay, so let's see if we can grab one of these. There's one of the lines I'm looking for. Now that line we want to change from a cut line to a score line. So sometimes they're a little hard to get them, but you simply click on the line, make sure it's highlighted over here, see what it is. It's a cut line. I'm going to come over to line type, and I'm going to change it to score. Yes. Now the top line, same thing. Now the top line is really interesting. It seems to have 3 cut lines, just as we had before. Now I'm going to change it to score to start. And that'll show as a score line, but it's showing us 3 different score lines. Well, we don't want that. So I'm going to take the heavier ones and I'm going to delete them and leave the one lighter one in place. So now we have 2 score lines here. We've got 1 more to go, and that's on this side. It looks like it's a single score line or cut. I'm going to change it from cut to score. Perfect. I'll just click away, and didn't mean to touch it that way. I want to start way down here, maybe over here. I want to highlight everything here. I want to group it so it moves together. But in order for it to cut together, we're going to attach it. So now we've taken care of that part. Now this is another piece, and we're going to highlight it as yellow as well. even though it's not going to show. Now we have a center piece here as well, so we are going to take a look at, we have a cut, just jumps, and another cut, and then this third cut is in the middle, and that's this line. We've actually selected it here, and I'm going to change that from cut to score. So now we have the other part of the envelope that is going to be scored, and it should match this one, but you'll notice it didn't change color. And there's no reason why it shouldn't change color, but it doesn't seem to want to, but not to worry about it because we can adjust pages. We've done this one. This is our last one we want to deal with now, is the actual flower petals itself. I'm going to change that from black and we'll make it a nice orange color. Now inside you will see 4 lines. These 4 lines are to be score lines. So if you come over to the side, you can select these one at a time, or you can use the shift key and select all 4 of those cut lines, and you'll see it highlighted here. Going over to the line type, and I'm going to change them to score lines. Now everything seems to be in order. We only have one issue now, and that is to select this piece and attach everything. We want to make sure it's attached so it cuts and scores the way we want it. Now our flower is not just 1 petal, it is 8 petals. So we are going to duplicate this piece. So we'll make 7 copies. So I'm going to duplicate it 7 times. You can come over here to duplicate. So we've got 1, so we need 7 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Perfect. So now we have all the parts and pieces of the project that we want to make. Now let's save this. I'm going to save it as flower petal. I'm going to call it kit so it matches what we had before. And I'm going to click save. So now we won't have lost our project whatsoever. Now let's come over here to make it. On the first one, it shows a score line, so that's interesting. So let's click cancel and see what happened with that score line. It could be that we didn't attach one of the score lines, and it looked like a single one going sideways. So I'm suspecting that I did not attach this. If I highlight them both, I look down here, it is not attached. So let's attach it now. This is something that can happen on a regular basis, and you just have to double check every time. So let's go back. Well, let's save it first anyway. And let's go back, and it's telling us it is saved. Just waiting for the make it button to come back. There we go. I'm going to make it. Now hopefully we will not see an extra piece. So here are the 8 petals, and I'll tell you a little bit about the paper I have chosen for that. I have chosen a double-sided paper. That's what you want for these. The next one, the envelope that I had told you about, it is going to require a longer piece of paper. Now I have some Cricut paper that is 12 by 24, and that's what I'm going to cut this from. If you do not have paper that long, what you can do is actually cut some paper and add it to your other 12-inch paper so it comes below it. I would suggest cutting your paper right about here and attaching it down here. But in the meantime, you can get 12 by 24 paper, which makes your life a lot simpler. I'm using a long mat in order to cut that, so I have that already. Let's take a look at our next mat, and that is one of the pieces of scrapbook paper, or a thinner bond paper. And that's the larger one. The smaller one is right beside it. So everything looks good there. And number 5 is the actual card itself with the score line. So everything is looking really good here. So let's go back up to this one and just double checking. I like to double check to make sure there's nothing spare anywhere. And that's something you should do for yourself as well. And it's just telling me one of my pieces is longer than 11.5. Yes, I know that because that's the envelope. Now, if you don't have a longer mat and you don't want to take care of this, you can just turn off the envelope and not print it whatsoever, and you can cut one out on your own at a later time. So I'm just going to click continue here. Go back to the first one, click continue. It's going to connect to my maker. There are just a couple of things I want to talk about while we're on this side of it. Most of the material we are going to be using here is going to be a medium cardstock. I have mine set as favorites across the top, but you can click on Browse All Materials and find the materials you want. So if you wanted cardstock, you could type in cardstock here, and it would list the different types of cardstock. Well, we're using my favorite, which is the medium, which I'll just click on right now and click done. Then it will tell me what I need to put in for the tools into my maker. You can use your Explore Air 2 for this as well, and you would have a scoring stylus rather than the wheel. That would be the only difference. The next one, it will also be a cardstock. Now, when we get to the number 3, which is one of the scrapbook papers, you're going to have to come up here and make a change. So in this case, I use laser copy paper. And I will leave that in place for laser copy. It'll do that one and this one. And then when I get back to the last one, I'm going to have to go back and I'm going to change back to medium cardstock. That's the only thing that you really have to know about what's happening here. So it looks like we're all ready to go. We're doing the first one, medium cardstock. I need to put in the wheel, and then I need to cut all my pieces of paper. So once I've got them all cut, we'll come back and we'll do some assembling.
Alright, now we've cut all of our pieces in our Cricut. We're going to be putting our card together that's going to look very similar to this, just a different design, and of course a different color for the envelope. So let me put these two aside. So you should have 2 pieces for your envelope. You should have a smaller piece that looks like this, and another larger piece that looks like that, and we will glue that together a little later. You should have 2 pieces of scrapbooking paper with one design and another, and one should be smaller than the other so it fits over top, so you have a little bit of a border. And those 2 pieces will fit on top of your card. When I fold the card in half, this will also have a border. So in this case, I have a pinkish color and some tones that match inside of it. So those pieces will go together. So let's start with just burnishing this one and getting these 2 pieces over here, which will be ready to put together soon. This is going to be the back of the flower. This is where the petals will be glued on. This will be the center front, which you can use a different embellishment if you wish. I have them to match the envelope. And now you will have 8 flower petals. Now I have a shiny side on one side and I have a duller color on the other, but it's a nice beautiful blue. And each one of these pieces should have 2 score lines on either side. And that's the first thing we're going to do, is we're going to take care of these score lines. Now you're going to score them so one comes up on the edge, and I'm going to show you how this is going to look. And I'll do the same on the other edge. You just have to find it. There it is. And then once those are folded in, you will turn it over And there are score lines that will bring the center in. And I just have to see those score lines. There they are. There's 1 and 2. So what we're going to do now is we're going to burnish those together. So now that we have one petal put together, now this is the back side, so this is what the front side will look at. You may want to have it in that direction so you have the gold, or you could absolutely reverse it and turn it around so that you have the blue as the centerpiece, and you could turn it around so that you have your other design on the other part of it. So go together like this. So that is a totally different look. I think I like it better the other way, so it doesn't matter how many times you fold it. Fold it over so that it fits in, and same thing back over on this side. So now you have a nice looking petal. Now you're going to do the same thing with the other 8 or the other 7 petals. What you also have to do for each one of them is to make sure that they don't unfold is we're going to take a piece of this double-sided tape. I'm just going to cut off a small piece here. I'm just going to place it down the center. Down the center. Now this is going to hold these 2 pieces in place. So I just have to remove one edge here. Get rid of that piece. It's going to stick to me. And then you will fold it in so it sticks into place, and the same thing on this side. Now that will allow your petal to stay put together just like this. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to do the same thing for each one of these till we have all 8 put together, and we'll be right back. So now that you have all of your pieces put together, so they're in the center, you should have 8 of them, and what we're going to do next is we're going to put them around the circle. So we're going to be gluing these into place. All 8 of them. We'll try to get them as straight as possible. So we just put them in place to start, and you'll get an idea of what this is going to look like. And this is a really beautiful flower, which will then in turn come over to these pieces and fit on top of those. So what I want to do to start this process is I'm just going to give a little fold in the center of the circle both ways. As close to the center as possible. And we'll fold so that I can see the center point. Now, probably a better way to look at it would be to take a marker, just use my Cricut pen here, and mark the center right here. And that is so when I'm gluing down the pieces, it'll be a lot easier to determine where they're going to fit. Now, all it is a matter of now is gluing the pieces together and then finally putting the last parts of the envelope and the card together. Now I find it easier to put the entire piece of glue, instead of on each individual part, it's just right on the circle. So I'm just going to shake this up a little bit, and I'm going to put a fair amount of glue on it because I don't want it to dry too quickly. I'm just going to use my finger here and spread it around. So I have a fair amount of glue here. Pardon my reach here while I just take the glue off my finger. Now you can still see the little black dot in the center. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place the first one into place. And I'm just going to place them loosely because I may have to move them around a bit. So there's the next one. Try to match these up as closely as possible. Don't worry if a little bit of the glue shows. Your goal here is to simply place them. Try to match them up as close as possible. all the way around, halfway there now. And you may get a little bit of overlap, but don't worry too much about it right at this point. Get those as close as possible. The next ones are a little more difficult to get into place, but this looks like it's working quite well. Proof in the pudding, of course, is when you get the last one into place. It looks a little small, so I'm going to start rotating them a bit to fit. Slide this last one into place, and I see I've got a little bit of an overlap, so I'm just going to move them around just a tiny bit and not worry too much about how much overlap we get. But I see I've got a gap here, this one goes underneath, so it's just a matter of just playing around with it a little bit until you've got it close enough. You just don't want to see too many big gaps, and you try to even them out at the top. There we go. Looking better now. As I say, the last one's always the hardest one to place. I think we're close enough. Keep squishing and squishing. That's why I use the tacky glue, because it's not all of a sudden it's there. Now, that is perfect. I'm not going to get it much closer than that. That looks really darn good. So now we can put the center circle in place, and then we can set them aside to dry while we do other pieces. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to place some glue on my dot. See, I always put a healthy amount of glue. Just put that to the side. Now you can change this around to have a different embellishment at a later time. Okay, I'm just going to slide that off to the side. Now next we want to put the larger piece on top of the card. And we're going to try and match it or make it as even as possible on both sides. And then what we'll do is we'll glue this one on top of the next one. So I'm going to start with this one. And I'm just going to glue a little bit around the edges. Close to the edge as possible, but you don't need it 100%. Push this off to the side. And because it's tacky glue, it's going to be a lot easier to try in place. And this does dry clear. So that's pretty good at the bottom here. The top's a little higher. Just move it up, place it a little bit. That looks pretty darn good. And if you want to really flatten it out, you can use your burnishing tool just to flatten it out. I think that looks pretty darn good. Okay, now we're going to add this extra piece here. Once again, just going to go around the edges. Now, we're going to center this on top of the one that's already centered. Looks pretty good right there. We move it up a bit. See, the tacky glue makes a huge difference. Now you will feel some lumps in there, so sometimes I just spread it in towards the center of the card. And that won't take too long. If you see it doesn't move quite where you want it, it's still tacky enough that you can let it just sit in place. So now we're waiting for this to dry and this to dry. So let's work on the envelope itself. Now the envelope is quite large, but you'll find that the centerpiece here will fit directly in without an issue. So what we want to do here is we want to be able to fold the sides in. So there is a shiny side and a rough side on my paper. So I want the rough side on the inside. So I know I'm going to have to fold this. So there is a score line. Follow that score line, give it a nice burnish. And you'll have to do the same with the score lines. This is the rough side and this is the shiny side. So I want the shiny side on the outside. So I'm going to find those score lines. I'm going to give them a good burnish. This will make it easier when you go to close the envelope at a later time. Score line. If you're using a Cricut Air 2, it might be a little more difficult to see the score line, but they are there. And most papers, when they come across a score line, will fold in nicely. So once we glue this in place, it'll be like this. It'll be the upper, this part and this part go together, and then when we will seal it with this one. So our first job is to take this piece, apply the glue and line it up inside. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. So I'm just going to do the same thing as I've done before, close to the edge at the bottom. Up through the triangle. Don't need to put any in the center. What you want to do is line it up at the bottom and then push it into place. And as I say, don't worry about if you have any glue showing on the edges. Now when you fold it back over, you want to bring it down so it matches right at the bottom here. Now, we have a little extra glue, but that's okay. It will dry in place. I'm going to let this dry as well, and then what we're going to do is we'll fold this up. Actually, what I'm going to do is do it this way. I'll join these two pieces together. I will add this one, and we will glue those together as well. So let's take a look at our flower now. You'll see on the back we've got the pieces of the petal. They're not quite dry yet because they are moving around. So I'm just going to leave it into place. This piece is looking pretty good. It's starting to dry. And you'll have room to put a greeting or whatever you want on the inside of this card. And I think this envelope piece is probably as dry as it's going to get for a bit. So I want to add a little dot of glue right here. I'm just going to hold that piece together. You notice it springs up, and that's exactly what you want. And then we're going to add some glue to these little edges here. And then I may have to hold it into place for a little bit. Say, don't worry if there's some over on the edges, that's just fine. It will dry clear. I'm just going to hold that in place till it's dry, and then we'll add the finishing touches to our flower and to the front of our card, and we'll be right back. Okay, we're ready to put on the finishing touches now. We're going to add the flower to the center. I'm going to add a little foam square that I have here, and I'm going to make it so it pops out more 3D. So I'm going to add the foam square to the back of the card, or the back of the flower, and just peel off the part. It'll give more of a 3D effect. Although you don't need to do this, you could probably just glue it on or tape it on just as it is. The little green piece doesn't want to come right off. There we go. All I need to do in this case is center it over my card, top, bottom. This time it's more permanent, so I'll just center it that way and squeeze it into place. And there we have our finished card. Isn't that absolutely gorgeous? And of course we have an envelope to match. So there we have it. This is our finished project. I hope you really enjoyed making this. This was totally a lot of fun. And in order to make them, basically you just need paper and glue and scissors and your Cricut machine, and away you go. Until next time, happy crafting!
Well, I hope you had a lot of fun making this card. This is so beautiful. You can write your greeting on the inside or add some other decorations. And of course the envelope, when we put that together, we have a small space at the bottom. so the card will actually fit right in here. Then all you need to do is bring the bottom up, glue the sides together, and then make a closure. After that, just address it and send it on its way. It was a lot of fun to make this card, and of course I always have one last thing for you to do, and that is to subscribe to my YouTube channel. So until next time, happy crafting from betsmakes.com.